I mean, obviously, we can't necessarily start anybody at home, but we can sort of do the rehash bit, I guess. So, I'm not really sure why I thought about this, but it was a while ago. The first time I thought about submarines not being real, and it's part of that idea or philosophy or concept, belief, whatever you want to call it, that we Goyim are lied to relatively consistently. And they've lied to us about our history and technology and even this current narrative of James Webb Space Telescopes and shit like that. They're lying to us all the time. And the big liars that we're talking about are the Jews who control the narrative. And by controlling the narrative, they keep themselves in the highest positions. And a lot of it is, they have to make up prestigious positions for these people to have so that they can get their big fat paychecks, live the life they want to live, and not really have to do anything. They work at their convenience. And by work, I mean, when you're a theoretical physicist, what's your work? Anything theoretical, what are you literally doing? Thinking about things? Well, shit, I wish I could get a theoretical job like that. But what I've experienced in the last few years of doing things the way that I do them, a guy that I respect, at least as of now, is the guy from My Lunch Break, because it really seems like he does a similar thing where he looks up the narrative that we're supposed to know and just weighs it out, lays it all out, sees if it makes sense or not. Does it make sense? Do you see patterns? Like, what's going on with it? And what he finds more often than not is that the narrative is full of clues, basically. Just clues to up. As soon as I get to this light every day, suddenly the feed jumps. Now I've got people from where? The Polynesian Islands, Thailand, Indonesia, India. Where is everybody that just got here from? Anyway, I just find that interesting. We're going to get to the submarine bit in a minute. I'll be home in about 5 minutes. So if you can wait that 5 minutes, we'll start talking about submarines. But I look at the narrative that we're given, and I see how we're lied to. I mean, it's crazy. You wouldn't expect it. You would think that as the conspiracy theorist, as the person that goes against the narrative, it would be more difficult for me to think this way than it is. But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the part that's crazy to me is this whole idea that submarines aren't real. I'm on part 5. This video is part 5. And it's not like I've looked into what I'm supposed to look into and I've felt foolish. I've looked into what I'm supposed to look into and just been more confused. This part 5. I'm all the way up to the 1900s, maybe a little bit into it. And I know the history. Cornelius Drebbel. If you're not familiar with Cornelius Drebbel, you really should check out who this guy was supposed to be. Like, just pretty amazing in the history that we're given. That's for sure. One of those polymaths who just did everything and was everywhere. It's really crazy how many of these historical figures were traveling all over Europe or traveling all over the United States or both, or like Ben Franklin, just traveling to and from Europe and Asia, like going back and forth from Europe to the United States like it's no big deal. Yeah. But you see this repeatedly with the My Lunch Break guy. He shows it all the time how the narrative is full of the same chat GPT copy and paste kind of stories. There was a fire, John somebody or another, or David, somebody or another won a contest and won the design contest. So then they built this building in like a year or two, and like it's just the same sort of narratives over and over again. So for me, like he's fascinating to me because he does that's like I don't even know of the conspiracy theory channel. I wouldn't even know where to look. I've never heard of anybody else question this. It seems like it's pretty obvious to people, right? And it's funny how the system sends the trolls it does, along with what I assume are some real people, and it's strange how angry people get because I'm questioning this, and how all these people that are angry, surprise, surprise, they can't actually make an argument. They just say kind of the same dumb shit over and over again. Electrolysis is how they make air, breathable air, and just dumb shit. And they act like I'm not literally reading the history, the narrative that we're supposed to read. I didn't make up this shit. I didn't go to Wikipedia, write it all out, and then come back and so I can read it. Like, oh wow, look at, like, I make up Cornelius Drebbel, and I make up the fact that every submarine in history seems to fail, and then I make up the fact that the leaps, like, they don't really explain too much. It's just suddenly we're much more capable than we were based on a development that needed to be made and was, and just and you're not supposed to think about it. You're not supposed to question it. Don't worry, we're almost there. To me it just seems strange when you're talking about that we supposedly had in the 1850s. We had the technology to build a submarine that could dive down 103 feet to the bottom of a harbor to harvest oysters. And we got a dumb Jew here. We got a dumb Jew. It's 1850. They're 103 feet down below the surface of the water, and they can stay down there for 4 hours. And they have a hatch on the bottom of the submarine that allows them to open up the bottom and harvest oysters and shit like that. Damn, we got a divorced dad with nipple rings. Why? See, I'm so glad it already happens, right? Is immediately the first thing he can say, because he's a dumb Jew. I'm telling the truth. He's a dumb Jew. But because he can't argue any sort of truth, he starts making up dumb shit. So I'm a divorced dad with nipple rings.
Ha! Gross.
Right. That's not my wife. That's some lady that's here. But I mean, why would you bring your weird nipple ring fantasy into the conversation? Could Jews be any? And it's a Jew, of course. When I say, "Oh look, it's a dumb Jew," he says, "Oh look, it's a divorced dad with nipple rings." That's his response. Could they be any more stereotypical?
You've been divorced?
Right. Just fucking stupid. I'm agnostic, dog. Sure you are. Can't believe the view count yesterday. Good morning, by the way. Yeah, well, that's how it should be. 10,000 plus. Let's make that shit happen. You guys should be sharing the video, liking, subscribing, all of that shit. I mean, unless you know somebody else talking about this shit better than I am. Anyway, we have somebody who wants attention, and I'm not interested in giving somebody attention. So we're just going to go to history, submarines, go to Google, go to we're in the history. We've gotten to the World War One. Yesterday we did U-boats. And this is where the narrative just sort of jumps. I mean, it's kind of strange how they do this. You know, it goes from we have nothing but failure technology. Oh yeah, that's what I was looking up yesterday. That's where we had gotten to the nuclear submarines. All right, so we were doing that history. So let's go there next. Only thing lower than those submarines is your intelligence. Yep, here we go. Well, that was a good one, man. Oh, he incorporated the topic with a burn. Oh, man, ouch. Man, I wish I could compete with that. Because he's so fucking smart. Let's see. An unnamed Israeli submarine torpedoed and sank the Lebanese. That'll be Israel. Alright, so I guess that's not going to work. So we'll go. Alright, so we were reading this yesterday. We were into the history. The Nautilus, we had done the Nautilus. Okay, so I think that's where we were. The Nautilus, Westinghouse commissioned the Nautilus. Okay, we hadn't gotten that far yet. We had just been reading about the Nautilus. So the Nautilus is the first. Okay, that was the first supposed practical submarine. And so what I mean by submarines aren't real is that I've seen what you guys have seen, right? I've seen the boats where most of the boat is underwater. I get that. I don't think we have submarines where the big torpedo thing can go all the way underwater, dive way deep down, swim all around like Hunt for Red October. Like, I don't think that's possible. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, right? Because we just sort of jump in this narrative, right? It just jumps to from this. So what they claim is the air independent propulsion AIP system is what was used before the nuclear sub. But then every instance of the air independent propulsion system is a story of failure. And they don't really cover they don't cover a lot of what I would consider to be the basics. How did they breathe? It's just like, again, I'm looking at the show right here, right? Let's see if they show it again. If they show the view so you can see the building there. Right here. Who built that? Who built these old fucking huge cathedrals and churches and whatever? Oh, let's see. Nah, mate, we got subs. Yep, that's literally the best thing people will say. Let me guess, because your grandfather was on one and you built them in the Navy, or your uncle, or some kind of shit like that, right? Like, it's crazy to think that people, like, they're smart, right? You understand that military personnel are just, they're robots. They make them into being robots, and that they lie to you. Like, if it's deemed certain level of clearance.
Well, they're lied to unless they have a certain level of clearance.
Right, but even the people that will say that they're on a submarine, if they're told to lie to you, they're going to.
Well, maybe they are, but it's a simulator that they don't know they're in.
Maybe. I don't really know. All I know.
It would be too hard hard to get all those people to lie, so you
How
lie
many
to
people?
them.
But how many are all those people? And we always think that way, that it would be too hard to get so many people to lie, but it's not. There are Hollywood secrets, like filming techniques and shit like that have supposedly been around for all the some time, but you and I don't know them. The average person doesn't know them. You'd have a hard time figuring them out. People think, it would take too many. Do you realize, like there's shit like Team Jorge, where it literally proves everything you need to know about Israel, interfering with elections, you know, uh, controlling social media. Like there's all this evidence to it, but you're not going to look. And unless we're told to look, we won't look in that direction. First of all, we're given the answer we need, and then secondly, if we do decide to question that thing, it becomes something that we're allowed to be made fun of or ostracized over. Like, you're supposed to be championed and encouraged to ask questions and shit, right? But then when you start questioning things that are supposedly the standard narrative, then suddenly people are allowed to tease you. If you don't believe the earth is round, then people are allowed to attack you. And for some reason, it makes them mad. If you don't believe we went to the moon, for some reason, it makes people really mad and they will attack you. If you don't believe in Jesus, same shit. You know, so many different things, they work that way. Instead of people saying, oh, you don't think this is real? Let me explain it to you. I don't know, maybe it triggers their ignorance. Like the thing about the submarines. So many people will argue with me like they were just researching submarines yesterday and they know everything I'm talking about. They know the story. When it comes to vaccines, people act like they were just researching vaccines yesterday and they know the ingredients and every argument that you make, you're just wrong. I get people all the time that come in here and tell me I'm wrong about so many things they can't even begin to start. And it's like, okay, well, try. Give it one thing, one specific thing that I'm wrong about. Tell me why I'm wrong. Not that I'm wrong, but why I'm wrong, how I'm wrong. And you just don't see it. Earth round and subs are real. We're in a matrix, bro. I don't think, I think it's closer to that than what we think it is, but I believe we're real. The same goofy profile that's been here multiple times is now again saying that Earth round and subs are real. Oh, okay, well then, hey shit, forget everything I've read, forget all the research I've been doing, forget the other previous parts of this video. Henry Cormier says it, so everybody should be like, fuck you. Henry said it. You know, one of the things that someone intelligent like my wife has a really hard time with is the video proof. Wife assumes, if I look up submarines in action, there's going to be at least one video of a submarine with a fucking camera attached to the front that dives down and swims around for a while and then comes back up, right? You'd think there'd be one of those. Nope. An official, like, this is the military page, this is a U.S. Navy sub page, this is the footage. It literally shows boats on the top of the water, then people on the inside of this sub that apparently, like, it's like you've completely forgotten what it's like. Like you've never been on a boat. Oh, well, it's not on the surface, it's down below. Okay. You ever been on one of those glass bottom boats where you get down, you're way down below? Oh, well, I have. When that thing moves, you feel it just like you would anything else. You're into something that in all actuality would be jostling and moving around if it's in water. Especially if you're moving in the water. So when they show the animation, the Atari 2600 animation of what is supposedly the ice with two little ice mountains on either side, and then the submarine ascending, you know, it's going up, 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 up. It starts at like 70, 80 feet below, and it's just rising up, up, up. And it's going so fast and so hard because it needs to smash through the ice. That's what the illusion is, right? That think about it like that. You were saying, how do we know? Well, that's what they're showing you. They're showing you that it's going up and it's going in that direction, like that angle, so it can smash through the ice. That's the purpose of that footage. And of course, they're smashing through the ice in the place using the part of the sub where they're actually hiding out in.
Maybe they have that tool that the cops have, but it's on the top of the sub pointing up. You know, the tool that they touch the glass and it shatters?
Yeah, that doesn't work.
At the top of the sub. And so when it hits the ice, it just shatters. And just the natural weight of the metal ship coming up.
That might be it. I mean, that's just as believable.
It's more believable.
Because, you know, again, if a sub were to go crashing through some ice, it's going to create a cartoon sub-shaped hole with no jagged edges or anything sticking out that could possibly rip through any of the what did the guy say? It didn't tear through the sides, it tore through the seams. There's no seams that could be torn through with the ice when a sub is. And the best part is, though, they show a picture of the crew, the entire crew. There's a few people sitting, there's a few people standing. And as they're going up and they smash into this ice, it's like a hot, blazing hot knife going through, you know, a little bit more than room temperature butter. Like the butter's just barely holding its shape. And that knife just goes zoop. All of the people in the cabin, they don't go, you know, they don't even go. There's like no movement. They smash.
It would be in unison.
Right.
You would see all the bodies moving.
Like, bam. Well, they would hit, so they would go kind of like, they would, it's physics. They're going up at whatever speed they're going up at. The sub is not going to go through solid ice like there's no resistance. There would be some resistance there.
When you're in a plane and you go through some wind turbulence, you feel it. And that's not a solid anything.
That's not a solid ice block that you're breaking through with your tin can. But these guys just, they don't even move. They go, contact. Okay, now, we're through it.
If a plane hits a bird, the passengers are not going to feel that.
If the bird is like a fucking pterodactyl, they would. And little tiny birds destroy planes all the time.
That's when they get in the motors.
No, they hit the nose and the nose fucking dents all up. Like a plane, but planes are supposedly made of different shit, so we can go with that. Not all subs break ice. Oh, well, then that kills the argument. Since not all subs do it, the ones that do, we shouldn't even think about it. Gotcha.
That is a valid point. Okay, not all subs break ice, but that doesn't.
That's not a valid point at all.
Argument that we're making today.
Right. That's just like a completely different statement. That's like I'm making cakes and you're like, I like ice cream. It's like, okay, cool. I'm glad you like ice cream.
Was sunk by ice, but yet there's icebreaker ships.
So you're calling all the people who have ever been on a sub a liar? Man, I mean, I really can't imagine that number is some crazy millions and millions of people. It's probably
more than we think it is.
Yeah, it's probably a few 100,000. Maybe
and
all the time.
I think it's more likely that they were duped rather than.
And that could be it. There's probably a lot of stuff that's a lot of people that are being duped. But see, the thing is, the problem is, I shouldn't be able to make any sort of arguments. If submarines are real, I should be able to look it up and be like, oh yeah, okay. It's just like the Earth shape. If the Earth is
anything up like that anymore, nothing is
Okay, now see, now you're doing the thing again.
But it's true.
Okay, but I should be able to find something.
You should.
And I should be able to find something immediately. The one video that I look up, the official Navy, they show me boats going across the top of the water. And I don't doubt that. And I don't doubt that we have like submersible things that can go way down, but they're usually connected to something up top, and they're definitely not shaped like cigars. Ice doesn't break perfectly. Not much does. Exactly, dumb shit. Now you're making my argument for me. Come on.
Or he's agreeing with you.
He definitely didn't pass 10th grade. I know in 10th grade, we did lots of lessons about submarines breaking through the ice. And yeah, I failed every single one of those. You know, we did that whole, remember how in 10th grade you did that whole study, that whole course about submarines breaking through ice?
I was in chemistry in 10th grade.
I mean, it's the arguments that keep coming my way are stupid. Why aren't you just allowing common sense to take over here? It makes sense to you to think that you can break through 4, 5, 6, you don't even really know, but 4, 5, 6 foot ice, smashing into it from the bottom with a tin can, with a pressurized can. Like any little bit of damage is gonna fuck that up. And you're underneath ice, so let's just say it fails and you bust a big hole in it, you're dead. Like almost immediately. It's just gonna implode. All that pressurized air and all that shit.
So that's what they have all the different compartments for, that they can seal off.
Supposedly. Again, this is supposedly. You know what you've never heard of? You've never heard of a military submarine fucking failing.
Well, they're not going to tell us that. We spent too much money.
Of course they would. That would be all kinds of shit. That would be all kinds of who cares? But like, think about how many planes fall, how many planes fail. To think that we supposedly have all these submarines traveling all over the ocean all the time, and you never hear it.
Well, they don't have to report it. There's no civilians.
Of course they would have to report something, and why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they report about, some casualties make us care?
But then we lose faith in the military.
Oh, please. Nobody loses faith in the military's abilities.
If they keep putting out subs that are failing,
So you think that there probably is a bunch of different. So what's more likely is that there are actually a lot of submarine failures that happen, and the government just keeps it from us, and that makes more sense. I gotcha. Like, that's just silly. That the way that you'll go conspiracy to debunk what I'm saying, but not to support it. Like, it's just strange. It's strange. There would be all sorts of people that are like, yeah, my family, I had a family member that was in a sub that crashed. The way that you say it, the way that everybody believes it, there's no way you could keep it quiet. Well, if submarines are crashing all the time and failing all the time, and there's all these accidents that happen, there's no way they could keep that quiet. All those family members would be talking.
If it were the opposite, we traveled by sub and the military used planes, you'd be saying the
now
same
we're doing
thing.
Something else that doesn't.
You'd be saying the same thing about planes. My point is.
No, I wouldn't. I can see planes.
So because you can't see them and you haven't
Exactly.
traveled on one,
100%. I think there's a very likely possibility that because not only have I not seen them or traveled on them, nor can I find any information that makes sense, nor can I find any video of it, there's something else going on there. I also think the same thing with rocket ships and shit like that. I'm not allowed to go on those things. I don't think we're going to the moon. I don't think we're going out in space. You can say what you want, but just because you believe, like again, we're talking about a system that siphons money out of us and lies to us all the time. What you're talking about is you're saying, no, guy, you're crazy because you don't accept the fact that in 1900 and 1850 we were making submarines. We you know, and even in the 1950s, we were making these nuclear power submarines that were able to travel these great. We're talking about the people that made, like, you know, think about the cars that were around, think about the televisions, even think about the airplanes that existed back then. And what I'm supposed to believe is there are submarines that can not only travel, but like it you're not letting the narrative debunk itself. Every every foot you go deeper, that's a shit ton more pressure than it was. Every 10 feet you go, that's even more pressure. So you believe that these submarines that are swimming around, like, they just have these pressure regulators that flood the pressure up way high to contend with the deep, and then let it go as it's going up. And I mean, do you understand how not believable that is? And then, I mean, you literally saw the video. You saw the video where they supposedly broke through some ice. What about that was believable to you? You think that a submarine can break through ice? That you would even do that to begin with? No jagged edges, no nothing. And the people on the inside don't move even a little tiny bit. I mean, it's just, it's like, it's, again, they don't, they tell you that the International Space Station, we don't have anti-gravity technology. The International Space Station is technically falling into the Earth at 17,500 miles per hour at least. And then, and every once in a while, they need to use some jets to because it starts to get too low, and then they raise it back up again. What jet power do we have that goes 17,500 miles per hour? You believe that they somehow got something up in the sky that's the size of 3 football fields, that it's perpetually falling at 17,000 miles per hour plus, and that they can do little spacewalks on it to fix it. Look, we're outside. Looks like we're in water, but we're outside. You believe that there's this big giant tube that goes underneath a bunch of different countries that don't agree on the surface, but as deep as 575 feet at its lowest point. We've somehow built this huge 17 miles or something like that, huge circle that we shoot electrons through, that we're able to separate the electrons, and we shoot them through, and they shoot at each other, and they crash, and we record them with Atari graphics. You believe that all the countries, they all agree to it, that we have the technology to be able to dig down and drill all the, like, why do you believe this stuff? You just don't, like, you know, your whole James Webb Space Telescope. Every single one of you believes the James Webb Space Telescope exists, and not a single fucking one of you understands anything about it. So, the James Webb Space Telescope, unlike the Hubble, that thankfully is supposedly in Earth's orbit and orbits the Earth every 90 minutes. But because it does that, it's only able to take pictures for such a small window because it can only take the pictures during the dark time. But thankfully, it's in Earth's orbit because remember when it fucked up, we were able to do missions on it and fix it. Remember when the mirror broke on the Hubble and they were out there fixing it? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, thankfully, the James Webb is perfect. And it's this space telescope that they took it out into space in a space shuttle. They opened up the hatches. The James Webb lifted out, its giant metal like sails, I guess, space sails extended, and then it set off on its journey to get to 1 million to 1.5 million miles away, so it's like throwing a dart at a bullseye, fucking a moving bullseye that's forever away, and they have to land in this Lagrange point. The Lagrange points were first theorized by a guy in 1770 or something like that. He figured that there are these Lagrange points that exist because there are 5 of them. Each planet has 5 Lagrange points. One ahead of it in its orbit, one behind it in its orbit, 2 in between the planet and the sun, and then 1 further out from the planet. And these are gravity pockets that exist that you can put things like satellites in them, and they won't have to have a fuel source. They'll just get pulled along by the Earth's gravity because they're in the Lagrange point. 1770, this guy figured this shit out. Right? That makes sense. Doesn't that make sense? And we shot the fucking the James Webb Space Telescope into this Lagrange point. Now, you'd think they'd have footage of the James Webb leaving the space shuttle and then opening its giant sails and then taking off on its way to the destination, this monumental achievement of man. But no, they just have an animation for those that want to see it. A nice, pretty animation. And the pictures that James Webb supposedly takes, it takes pictures, and then it sends those pictures 1 million to 1.5 million miles to Earth, where it's caught by the big giant picture catching glove. But it takes pictures in infrared. Yeah. So then the computer takes that information, sends it to the other computer, and then that computer renders the pretty picture that they show us. Or an artist. One or the other, because it doesn't actually take pictures. You think the telescope takes pictures? Oh my God, you're so stupid. But it just so happens that Lagrange point is always in the Earth's shadow. So we can always take pretty pictures from the James Webb Space Telescope. Ta-da! Ta-da, that makes sense, doesn't it? I'm not even reading these things because I know it's fucking stupid. Submarines, this guy says, submarine are absolutely, definitely real. My dad was on a submarine base, worked on them along with the submarine museum next to the base. Check it out. Yep. See, I mean, again.
Museum means nothing.
How many times is that going to happen here?
You can make anything out of Legos too. It doesn't mean that it works as real.
There are boats. They are boats. They do not go underwater. I'm still trying to figure out how they got the air for it. Let's see. The idea for a nuclear-powered submarine was first proposed in the United States Navy by the Naval Research Laboratory's physicist Ross Gunn in 1939. The Royal Navy began researching designs for nuclear propulsion plants in 1946. Of course they did.
I saw a submarine.
Submarines. This guy says Wubmarines. He says it in capital letters. WUBMARINES are not real, and I am retarded. He's trying to make a point about how stupid I am, and he doesn't even spell submarines correctly. He says Wubmarines are real, and I'm retarded. I mean, this is amazing.
First of all, calling somebody retarded is no longer correct.
Somebody says you're, Y-O-U-R, a joke.
But when I was on my cruise, we saw a submarine take off.
Uh-huh.
And it was still like halfway above water or whatever, and everybody was waving, and they sailed off, and the guys got in, and it slowly went underwater, and then we couldn't see it.
Right? Yeah. It went underneath the surface of the water. And it probably was pretty far off, and it probably was almost out of your sight anyway. And yeah, they're going to do stuff like that. No doubt about it. I'm telling you. Listen, I'm just trying to figure it out.
I'm not saying that they don't exist, just not in the way that we've been taught.
That's what I keep saying.
Okay, but that's not what you've said.
I've said it over and over again. I don't think we have the hunt for Red October type of submarines that can swim all around like dolphins and shit. I think we have stuff that can go down. We have stuff that can be connected to stuff at the top and still go down. But, you know, that thing that you saw, that easily could have just went down below this, you know, the surface, and a small part was still sticking out of the top. You just couldn't see it. It was so far away. You know, you just don't understand. Like, that's the point I'm making.
It wasn't that far away, though. We were on our ship.
Mm-hmm.
So we were already in deep water.
Mm-hmm. But the things disappear really quickly when they get away from you, and especially out in the water. It's deceptive. I'm telling you, it should exist. I should be wrong, and I should be sitting here finding all this information that makes sense. But most of you are okay with the idea that in 1939, they're talking about nuclear-powered submarines. It makes you shake your head and smile. That's my point. Something isn't right here. What is going on that we should like, when I put submarines in action into YouTube, I should get a bunch of videos that show me what submarines look like underwater. And I didn't see any of them. They could put a camera on the top of a submarine. They put cameras on the tops of rocket ships and shit, right? They put cameras on the top of everything nowadays. Well, actually, the camera that's on top of the rocket ship always faces down. You never see the camera facing up. But I'm just saying, this should be so much easier than it is. Construction of the world's first nuclear-powered submarine was made possible by the successful development of a nuclear propulsion plant by a group of scientists and engineers in the United States at the Naval Reactors Branch of the Bureau of Ships and the Atomic Energy Commission. So, immediately, we're going to get a bunch of details, right? But you're not going to get the details on... They just did that? They just figured that shit out? If you can figure out nuclear-powered submarines in the fucking 50s, 40s, 50s, why don't we have small little nuclear power generators that are, you know, why hasn't that technology progressed like you would think it should have by now? Maybe. I mean, that's what progression would be. Progression would be that it doesn't, you know, that they take the danger away. By the way, you're watching, like, sub, share, do all that good stuff that I'm supposed to beg you for, remember? In July 1951, the U.S. Congress authorized construction of the first nuclear-powered submarine, Nautilus, under the leadership of Captain James Hyman G. Rickover. Nautilus, sharing a name with Captain Nemo's fictional submarine, Nautilus, in Jules Verne's 1870 novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas. The first demonstrably practical submarine, Nautilus, and another USS Nautilus, SS-168, that served with distinction in World War II. They didn't. See, that's the fucking crazy part, is you read this and you think, okay, there's details, it makes sense, whatever. But go read about the Nautilus. The Nautilus was not successful. And here, the Nautilus was a submarine designed by Rudolph Fulton and first tested in 1800. What are you talking about? You know, though preceded by Cornelius Drebbel's vessel in 1620 and the Turtle. The only one that actually worked was Cornelius Drebbel's vessel. Every other one of these failed. Nautilus was designed between 1793 and 1797 by the American inventor Robert Fulton, then living in the French First Republic. So apparently, this isn't the Nautilus that they're talking about. That's the Nautilus it took me to. Let's see. What's the USS Nautilus? Oh, here we go. Now we just jump to this thing. A Norwalk-class submarine and one of the V-boats was the third ship of the U.S. Navy to bear the name. It's a ship. They're calling it a ship. Wow, there's a lot to it. Construction and commissioning. Oh, this should be good, right? Nautilus was originally named and designed designated V6SF-9, but was redesignated and given hull classification symbol SC-2 on February 11th, 1925. Her keel was laid on May 10th, 1927 by the Mare Island Naval Shipyard of Vallejo, California. Vallejo, no! She was launched on March 15th, 1930, sponsored by Miss Joan Kessling, and commissioned on July 1st, 1930. It was the first of many submarines built at Mare Island, California. There you go. That's the construction and commissioning history, I guess. The configuration of V4, V5, and V6 resulted from an evolving strategic concept that increasingly emphasized the possibility of a naval war with Japan in the far western Pacific. This factor and the implications of the 1922 Washington Naval Treaty suggested the need for long-range submarine cruisers or strategic scouts, as well as long-range mine layers, for which long endurance, not high speed, was most important. The design was possibly influenced by the German U-cruisers of the type U-139 and type U-151 U-boat classes, although V4, V5, and V6 were all larger than these. Wait, weren't they from before that? A raised gun platform was provided around the conning tower, and deck stowage for spare torpedoes was included under the platform and in the superstructure. V6 and her near sisters, V4 Argonaut and V5 Narwhal, were initially designed with larger and more powerful man-designed diesel engines than the Sulzer engines that propelled earlier V-boats, which were failures. So the previous ones that worked on the earlier stuff were actually failures. Isn't that strange? Isn't it strange how this works? Unfortunately, don't forget to like and sub. Unfortunately, the specially built engines failed to produce their design power, and some developed dangerous crankcase explosions. The engineering plant was replaced in 1941-42, somewhere around there. So they're saying that the engines that these engines replaced, they failed, but these failed as well. So that makes sense, huh? The as-built engine specifications were two Boeing, B-U, capital E-N-G, built, and MAN, capital M-A-N, hyphen, designed, direct drive, 10-cylinder, blah, blah, and diesel. Like, here's a whole bunch of fucking details about shit that doesn't matter. The auxiliary engines were for charging batteries or for increased surface speed via a diesel-electric system providing power to the main electric motors. You notice how every single one of these, it seems like the main talking point is surface speed, is how these things performed on the surface.
Yeah.
Because they're all real, though. They're all submarines that go deep down in the water and go all around and shit. Similar to her sister built at Portsmouth, V6 was built to a partial weld, partial riveted construction method, which means there are seams that could be gotten through by the ice. Welding was used to join the vertical keel plates and also in other non-critical areas like the superstructure, piping brackets, and support framing. The inner and outer hulls were still entirely riveted. So that's all you get to know about how this is a submarine. It's not a boat. Look, it's a submarine, not a boat. That submarine was a thing. I'm telling you, it shouldn't be this hard. So that was okay. So literally, this says in July, the U.S. Congress authorized the first nuclear-powered submarine, the Nautilus. So that's July 1951. So this says laid down August 2nd, 1927. Launched March 15th, 1930. Commissioned July 1st, 1930. Decommissioned June 30th, 1945. Stricken July 25th, 1945. Fate. Sold for scrap November 16th, 1945.
Why didn't they put it in a museum somewhere?
Why are they telling me that this was the first nuclear-powered submarine built in 1951?
Maybe it wasn't nuclear.
No.
It was scrap.
No.
And the new one in 51 was nuclear.
Okay. I clicked on, it said, the first demonstrably practical submarine, the Nautilus, and another USS Nautilus SS-168 that served with distinction in World War II. I click on the blue USS Nautilus, and it takes me to this that was sold for scrap in 1945.
A pizza gag is one thing, but lying is a boundary I will not cross. I don't want her to lie, but right now her testimony.
I'm wrong here, right? Why does this happen? If I'm wrong, why is this happening? Why isn't this easier to prove? I'm not trying to prove that I'm right. I'm trying to prove myself wrong. And unlike anybody in the comments, I'm actually using like what they want me to know. Right? Like this is wild. The Westinghouse Corporation was assigned to build its reactor. After the submarine was completed at the Electric Boat Company, First Lady Mamie Eisenhower broke the traditional bottle of champagne on Nautilus bow, and the submarine was commissioned USS Nautilus SN 571. So now we've got a different one. Let's do this. So now this takes me to this. USS Nautilus SSN-571 was the first operational nuclear-powered submarine, and on the August 3rd, 1958, became the first submarine to complete a submerged transit of the North Pole. Her initial commanding officer was Eugene Dennis Wilkinson, a widely respected naval officer who set the stage for many of the protocols of today's nuclear navy of the U.S. and who had a storied career during military service and afterwards. So, think about like the world famous 58 Chevy, right? The 58 Chevy. The people that were capable of building the 58 Chevy were also capable of building a nuclear-powered submarine that could traverse underwater at the North Pole. Because I'm stupid. It is. It's a badass car, but like think about the technology that we had back then. We're talking about like cars that didn't have air conditioning and shit. Like these were cars that didn't have power steering, that didn't have like, you had to like really step on the brakes and shit. Like all of this. We're talking about the 50s America. Like think about what that is. We're not even talking about, go into the moon yet or anything like that. Yet we're capable of building nuclear-powered submarines that can traverse the North Pole. I mean, what are we even talking about here, guys? Let's see. Completed April 22nd, 1955. Commissioned September 30th, 1954. Decommissioned March 3rd, 1980. Stricken March 3rd, 1980. Well, good. You'll never be able to check it out, except for at the museums where it's at now. Let's see. Sharing a name with Captain Nemo's fictional submarine in Jules Verne's classic 1870 science fiction novel, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and the USS Nautilus SS-168 that served with distinction in World War II. That was the first one that failed. We literally, what kind of distinction was that? This is wild. The new nuclear-powered Nautilus was authorized in 1951. It was authorized. What the fuck does that mean? I didn't know boats were authorized. Construction began in 1952, and the boat was launched in January 1953. So, when in 1952 did construction begin? Do we know? What did it say? It said construction began in 1952. So is that laid down? Would that be laid down? So June 14th, 1952. So it took about a year and a half for them to build this nuclear-powered submarine in 1952, 53. Because it's January of 54 when it's, that's not a year. So basically all of 53 and then, what did it say, June? June. So another 6 months. So literally a year and 6 months. These guys were cranking out submarines in the submarine factory in the 50s. Gotcha. Sponsored by Mamie Eisenhower, First Lady of the United States, wife of 34th President. Look at all these details they're giving us right now. Wife of 34th President Dwight D. Eisenhower. It was commissioned the following September into the United States Navy. Nautilus was delivered to the Navy in 1955. Because of her nuclear propulsion, allowed her to... What? There's one of those great sentences that they always seem to have in this. Strange how that works, isn't it? Because of her nuclear propulsion, allowed her to remain submerged far longer than diesel-electric submarines. She broke many records in her first years of operation and traveled to locations previously beyond the limits of submarines. In operation, she revealed a number of limitations in her design and construction. This information was used to improve subsequent submarines. Nautilus was decommissioned in 1980 and designed and designated a National Historic Landmark in 1982. The submarine has been preserved and blah, 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 blah. Planning and construction. All right, let's see this. Hyman G. Rickover. So you're just going to always get like, look, I'm standing in the submarine. That makes it real. No, look, this is the submarine on the water. Oh, yeah, that big-ass boat. That big-ass boat, filled with pressurized air, is able to take in enough water to sink itself and then be navigable underwater really easily. Do you guys even understand what you're sort of talking about here? Like take a 2 liter, right? and just put the lid on it. Don't even fill it with, like, don't even use pressurized air. Just put the lid on it, and then take it to the pool and try to pull it under and see how deep you can take that thing, and take it to a deep pool, or take it to take it to a deep pool, a 12-foot pool. See if you can pull that thing all the way down to the bottom. See how easily it is to maneuver it.
But it doesn't have a propeller on it.
Huh?
Doesn't have a propeller on it.
You're the propeller. I mean, this is crazy. And this is highly pressurized air these things have inside them. And yet somehow the ballast tanks are able to be filled with enough water. Like, how much water does it take to pull something down below the surface and then make it so you can, like, I can steer, I can go, I can dive down deep. Again, it's not like once you go underwater, you can then just go where you want. It takes more and more energy the deeper you go. They would have to take on more and more water to go. So the sub that's going up and down and moving, it actually has water tanks that are taking in water and spitting it out as it's going up and down. That is some amazing maneuverability. While also keeping
it doesn't do this. They don't move that
right, but they move pretty well though. They can get in dogfights. But yeah, it's got these water injection and it just does it. It's moving all around. It repressurizes itself. It does all that stuff. And this is the 1950s. Yes. The conceptual design of the first nuclear submarine began in March 1950 as Project SCB-64. What's that? The Ship Characteristics Board was a unit of the United States Navy. Oh. So that's not... The purpose of the Ship Characteristics Board was to coordinate the creation of ship characteristics that are essential to the design of naval combatants and auxiliaries. Coordination was required because the operators and the designers of ships had different interests, perceptions, concepts, and constraints. As summarized by the naval historian Norman Friedman, how to achieve the best possible compromise among competing bureaus has been one of the great dilemmas of the 20th century U.S. naval administration. That's okay. So this is the administration. In July 1950, so the first nuclear submarine, the conceptual design. So they started designing it. They started designing it in 1950. And in July 1951, U.S. Congress authorized the construction of the nuclear-powered submarine. So from March 1950 to July 1951, they basically invented the nuclear-powered submarine. That's awesome. That's a pretty awesome. I would love to know more about that story. The testing of it, the whole concept of it. Like, how do you... And what they say is the nuclear-powered submarines, what they are, they're in different compartments. So the part that's it's a mini nuclear plant that's inside the submarine. That's where the nuclear power comes from. It's not like you're thinking like they built a little engine that's nuclear powered. No, it's a mini nuclear plant inside the submarine. That, like, just like everything else, must be on a really amazing gyroscope, because it's amazing how submarine people never seem to be affected by the fact that they're moving in water. Gotcha. Well, hey, when you're in an airplane, blah, blah. Yeah, when you're in an airplane, you can feel it. If you do anything, if they do anything other than the cruise, like when they're cruising, it still kind of feels weird walking. But if they were to, like, just move a little bit, you'd go, oh, whoa. Like, it's just nuts. All right. let's see. In July 1951, the U.S. Congress authorized, which was planned and personally supervised by Captain, later Admiral, Hyman G. Rickover. Let's learn about Hyman G. Rickover. Born January 27th, 1900. Died July 8th, 1986. They always live that full life, don't they?
During a time where people didn't live that long.
Oh, yeah, I guess. I mean, was Admiral in the United States Navy. He directed the original development of naval nuclear propulsion and controlled its operations for three decades as director of the U.S. Naval Reactors Office. In addition, he oversaw the development of Shippingport Atomic Power Station and the world's first commercial pressurized water reactor used for generating electricity. Rickover is also one of 4 people who have been awarded 2 congressional gold medals. Damn, son. So I can't wait to see all of his schooling, right? Because this guy probably has some incredible schooling instead of being in the military from a really young age. Father of the Nuclear Navy, that's his nickname. The Kindly Old Gentleman, or simply COG, K-O-G, Kindly Old Gentleman. Born January 27, 1900, in Macau, Mazowski, Vistula Land. I don't know what the fuck that is. Vistula Land, also known as Vistula Country, was the name applied to the lands of Congress, Poland from 1867 following the defeats of the November Uprising 1830 to 1831 and the January Uprising 1863 to 1864, as it was increasingly stripped of autonomy and incorporated into Imperial Russia. Oh. So it's a Polish-Russian thing? Gotcha. Service branch. Years of service. 1918 to 1982. So, he went into the military at 18 years old. So I wonder where he got his engineering and nuclear education and all that to be able to be that guy. Like, that's pretty interesting, don't you think? He went into the Navy, or into the military, into the Navy. Yeah, Navy. Right at the end of World War I. And then was there through World War II, where they just figured out submarines. Okay, got it. No, let's do this. He was married to Ruth D. Masters from 1931 to 1972, where she died. They had 1 child. He got remarried in 74 to 86 when he died. Not even 2 years later, he got remarried. Rickover, that's a fucking common name, don't you think? How many Rickovers do you know? Rickover is known as the father of the nuclear navy, and his influence on the Navy and its warships was of such scope that he may well go down in history as one of the Navy's most important officers. Jesus. He served in a flag rank for nearly 30 years, from 53 to 82, ending his service career as a 4-star admiral. His years of service exceeded that of each of the U.S. Navy's 5-star fleet admirals, Leahy, King, Nimitz, and Halsey, all of whom served on active duty full life after their appointments. Rickover's total of 63 years of active duty service makes him the longest serving naval officer, as well as the longest serving member of the U.S. Armed Forces in history. And he's the inventor of the nuclear powered submarine. What a fucking... It's amazing how so many of these guys have so many of those, like, they're just full of accomplishments. Can I have that piece of paper, please? Thank you much. Appreciate you. Thank you much. Appreciate you. Got to blow all the cocaine out of my nose. Because that's what you do when you do cocaine.
I could not.
Rickover's total of... wait. Having become a naval engineering duty officer, EDO, in 1937, after serving as both a surface ship and submarine qualified unrestricted line officer, his subsequent legacy of technical achievements includes the U.S. Navy's continuing record of 0 reactor accidents. They have a record of 0 accidents. Because that's how things work, right? We're perfect. When you're inventing technology and shit like that, it's perfect. It's funny because up until the U.S. Navy's perfection, every single other submarine failed miserably. Everybody died. The submarine was lost, you know. It's fucking wild to think that suddenly this guy, he just figures it out. Early life and education. Rickover was born Chaim Gadala Reichauer to Abraham and Rachel Rochelle Lee, Nee Unger, Rickover, a Polish. No. They're Polish.
Holocaust survivors?
Well, but they're
Immigrants?
they're Jewish. They're Jewish. Of course, the best naval officer, nay, longest serving military officer, highest ranking dude ever. He just happens to be Jewish. Isn't that amazingly coincidental? Isn't that amazing, you guys? How many of you are surprised? I know, I'm super surprised. Not only is he Jewish, but for some reason he changed his name to hide from who? Who? Why would they hide their identities? Why would they change their names and hide their identities? They got nothing to hide, right? They're doing everything right, right? Please, by all means, somebody tell me what I'm getting wrong here. They're a Polish-Jewish family from Macau, Mazowiecki in Vistula land. His parents changed his name to Hyman, which was derived from Chayim, Chayyim, meaning life. He did not use his middle name, Gedalia, a form of Gedalia, but he substituted George when at the Naval Academy. Of course. The proud Jews who were too proud to take off the armband and the badge that meant they were going to get killed, they were all changing their names and shit over here, hiding from everybody. So they thought they'd hide him by changing his name to Hyman. Who wants to be called Hyman? That's just about the worst first name. That's up there with Dick. You know, that's up there with Nipple Tits. Is Nipple Tits a name? No. No, I can't. I don't know any others. What other names are like that?
None.
Hyman. They changed his name to Hyman. Assholes. Your asshole parents changed your name to Hyman. Right. I'm just going to call him Pussy Juice. Yeah, your new name is Pussy. Just straight Scroat. We're going to just call you Scroty Scroterson. Come here, Scroats. Isn't it weird to think that?
Taint. I'm gonna name him Taint.
Isn't it weird to think like the Wonder Years got away with that? In that time, the older brother called his younger brother Scroat, and the dumb Jew censors couldn't figure it. They didn't know what it was, so got away with it. Scroat. Hey, Scroat. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here's one of my favorite words when it comes to Jews. Rickover made passage to New York City with his mother and sister in March 1906, fleeing anti-Semitic Russian pogroms. Pogroms. This is Jews are the only ones that suffer from that. Literally, what they're doing to other people right now seems like it, but it's not. It's okay. During the Revolution of 1905.
They've done more of that than what was done to them, supposedly. But nobody talks about that.
They're just awful. They're just awful. They really are awful, awful people. And it's not like you just hide and go, oh, well, no, it's the government, it's this and that. No, the people overwhelmingly put Netanyahu in charge with the people that he's with, who were already known to be like psychopaths, warmongering psychopaths. Like it's just this. It's the Jewish people are bloodthirsty. All during 2023, they weren't protesting that it was stacking up to be the deadliest year for the Palestinians and at least since 2020 or since 2006, but maybe even more. With 273 or 270 something, I think it's 273 people had been killed so far that year. Civilians had been killed so far that year by the Israeli army, the Israeli military, and they were just killing left and right, and they had been killing for years, and yet the Israeli people weren't protesting. Please stop killing. You're making us look bad. We don't need to kill these people. Why are you killing these people? It's not fair to kill these people. They were protesting because the executive branch and the judicial branch weren't getting along. And every week they were protesting to culminate in a protest, a real protest where all of these Jewish reservists, because in Israel at 18 everybody has to serve somewhat in some capacity in the military, so then they're all technically reservists. In a form of protest, all of these Jews said, if some sort of conflict happens to spark off in the next few months, we're not going to fight in it. Nobody's saying there's going to be a conflict or anything. We're not saying we know anything. But if something were to happen, we would not fight in it. And luckily for them, Jake Sullivan promised the Israeli people that for every person that decides they're going to do this noble thing in protest and not fight in the conflict that was happening, the U.S. the conflict that wasn't happening yet, but if it were to happen, that the U.S. would cover all of the people that essentially deserted. I mean, it's a desertion. It's a crime to be a reservist and get called up and refuse to do it. That's a crime. But hey, don't pay attention to that. Don't pay attention to any of that. I'm going off on a fucking tangent here when we're trying to talk about submarines. Oh, let's see. They joined Abraham, who made earlier trips there beginning in 1897 to become established. Oh, right. We're talking. Rickover made passage to New York with his mother and his sisters in March 1906, fleeing the anti-Semitic Russian pogroms. During the 1905 revolution of 1905, they joined Abraham, the father, who had made earlier trips there beginning in 1897 to become established. Right? These Jews were just traveling back and forth from, what was it called? Vistula land, traveling from Vistula land in Poland to the United States to get himself established. What the fuck does that even mean? Like, think about it. Let's just say you came over here, you bought yourself a house, you did whatever. How long is it going to take you to go back to the old country, do what you need to do, and then come back? Like that house is going to be sitting there for a long time without anybody in it. You know, it's not like there's a security system back then. What was he getting established? What was this Jew coming over here and getting us? How was he getting himself established in 1897? From 1897 to 1906. For 9 years, can you imagine for 9 years? I'm like, hey, I'm going to the other country to go get us established. I'm gonna come back and you stay here with the kid, and I'm gonna go get established in America while you stay here in Russia, Poland. for almost 10 years, I'm getting us established. You can come, but I'm gonna get us established with all my dumb Jew friends. Think about how fucking crazy that is. Rickover's family lived initially on the east side of Manhattan, but moved 2 years later to North Lawndale, Chicago, which was a heavily Jewish neighborhood at the time, where Rickover's father continued work as a tailor. Ha! A Jewish tailor. Go figure. Rickover took his first paid job at age 9, earning 3 cents an hour, equivalent to $1.02 in 2023. You have to love how they all have these stories. We were so poor and hardworking. I worked for 3 cents an hour back then. I busted my ass working for 3 cents an hour to get to the position I was at. You know, before I joined the military at 18 years old. He earned 3 cents an hour for holding a light as a neighbor operated a machine. So, back then, nobody could figure out like a clamp. Here, let me clamp this light so I don't have to pay some dumb Jewish kid 3 cents an hour to hold the lamp. He made 3 cents an hour to hold a lamp. Oh, that's fantastic. Later, he delivered groceries. He graduated from grammar school at 14. Yada, 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 yada. Rickover attended John Marshall Metropolitan High School in Chicago and graduated with honors in 1918. He then held a full-time job as a telegraph boy delivering Western Union telegraphs, through which he became acquainted with Congressman Adolph J. Sabbath, a Czech Jewish immigrant. Of course he did. You know how, like, congressmen always make friends with the mail delivery boy? Oh, do you not realize how fucking ridiculous these narratives are? The congressman made friends with his Western Union telegram delivery boy? Get the fuck out of here. It was probably like, hey, thanks for the telegram. Are you Jewish? Yeah, I'm Jewish. All right, let's hang out. Sabbath, and of course his name is Adolph J. Sabbath. Oh, the Jew that got him on his way is named Adolph Sabbath. Adolph Sabbath. They were. It was a popular name, just like it was a popular mustache. You know? Charlie Chaplin had it. What's his name? Laurel and Hardy had it. Laurel had it. Or was it Hardy? Which one was the fat one? Laurel. Sabbath nominated Rickover for appointment to the United States Naval Academy. So I know that, like, if I'm looking for the best of the best to be in my Navy, to be my protection, to be the badasses, I'm going straight to the Jewish community. Oh yeah. You know those badass Jews you always hear about? I mean, even in the picture of the dude, he looks tiny. Rickover was only the third alternate for appointment, but he passed the entrance exam and was accepted. Man, this guy is like just a fucking pioneer. So it's going to be one of those things where you go, okay, so you just don't believe that people can be super super awesome and super talented? And that's what it has to be. This guy just he was just this amazingly awesome little bitty Jewish guy. One of these polymaths, one of these, I mean, he designed the first goddamn nuclear sub. At 18 years old, he's delivering Western Union telegrams. And less than 20 years later, or maybe around 20 years later, he's designing the world's first nuclear powered submarine. You guys cool with that, right? You guys are good with that? Does that make sense to you? Would it make sense to you if it wasn't a Jew? Because I know we're taught to believe the Jews are like really awesome. But if this was a Muslim guy, would you accept it as much? Or a black guy? If it was a black guy, you'd just laugh at me. Black guy? High-ranking naval officer in the 30s? No, sir. All right, we got to finish this because I don't want to keep going. Okay, naval career through World War II. So that's sort of it. He's just there. Rickover's naval career began in 1918 at the Naval Academy. At this time, attending. So he graduated school. Well, no, he finished school at 14, didn't it say that? Graduated grammar school at 14. Yeah, graduated high school in 1918 with honors. So that had to be June-ish, right? So by the time, like, he had already held his full-time Western Union job and made friends with congressmen, all by the time, like, it's still 1918 when he began his naval career. And don't they accept you into the Naval Academy, like, in the fall? Isn't it just like a normal school where you would start you anytime you show up? You would have to wait till. So from June to the fall to before he could be put, he was a full-time Western Union guy who happened to make friends with a congressman who then appointed him he was going to be the third one ever to be accepted into the academy from the outside. He passes the test, and now by fall he's in the academy. That's like a 2-3 month.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't you guys making friends with congressmen from your delivery job? I can't tell you how many congressmen I've made friends with delivering food or telegrams or whatever. All right. At this time, attending military academies were considered active duty service, due in part to World War I. On June 2nd, 1922, Rickover graduated 107th out of the 540 midshipmen and was commissioned as an ensign. Ensign. What is it? Ensign. So this guy is so special that he does all these things, but then he's only 107th out of 540. That's not that impressive. He joined the destroyer La Vallée on September 5th, 1922. Rickover impressed his commanding officer with his hard work and efficiency and was made engineer officer on June 21st, 1923, becoming the youngest such officer in the squadron. I mean, so you work hard and you do your job, that qualifies you as an engineer now? Doesn't that require schooling?
An engineer and an architect.
Made engineer officer.
And then when he snapped a picture of what he was doing, he became a photographer.
He next served on board the battleship Nevada before earning a Master of Science degree in electrical engineering from Columbia University in 1930.
He stepped off the boat, studied real quick.
Well, in 1923, he became the youngest officer of the squadron. He next served on the battleship Nevada. So,
while going to school.
When did that time frame end and how did that overlap?
It's virtual school.
And I mean, to get a master's degree.
Virtual.
Oh, yeah. I'm not even thinking about virtual schooling.
Zoom meetings. You
right.
got reception on the sub.
Right. No, that
Use
makes sense.
The satellite Wi-Fi.
Right. You got it. No, I'm stupid. I'm sorry. From Columbia University in 1930, by way of a year at the Naval Postgraduate School and further coursework at Columbia. He got a master's in a year? Are you guys cool with this? Does this make sense to you? At the latter institution, he met Ruth D. Masters. We just used Masters, so let's use Masters again. A graduate student in international law, whom he married in 1931 after she returned from her doctoral studies at the Sorbonne in Paris. Jesus Christ!
Jesus was there too?
Might as well have been. She was a graduate in international law and got her doctoral studies. What, a doctorate in law? Is that what she got, a doctorate in law or what? What do they mean by doctoral studies in that regard? She's like both of the Huxtables wrapped into one.
She went but didn't finish.
And you have to understand,
this
is in the 1930s when little Jewish women, Jewish women were all over the place at the school, right? Poor. These are always, I bet she was a poor Jewish girl who grew up, had to share her brother's shoes. They were so poor. Shortly after marrying,
what's her name's mother?
Rickover wrote to his parents of his decision to become an Episcopalian, remaining so for the remainder of his life. Wow,
that's a jump.
That's a big fucking deal. What do you think took place to make that guy be like, I'm not a Jew anymore?
Skull and Bones Club didn't want a Jew.
Well, Skull and Bones is not, no, they're Yale. Rickover had a high regard for the quality of the education he received at Columbia, as demonstrated in this excerpt from a speech he gave at the university some 52 years after attending. Columbia was the first institution that encouraged me to think rather than memorize. My teachers were notable in that many had gained practical engineering experience outside the university and were able to share their experience with their students. I am grateful, among others, to Professor Moorcroft here and Arndt. Much of what I have subsequently learned and accomplished in engineering is based off the solid foundation of principles I learned from them. Rickover preferred life on smaller ships, and he also knew that young officers in the submarine service were advancing quickly. So he went to Washington and volunteered for submarine duty. Yeah, that makes sense. His application was turned down due to his age at the time, 29 years. Fortunately for Rickover, he encountered his former commanding officer from Nevada while leaving the building. Yep. He just happened to run into his buddy on the way out. And he was like, they won't let me in because I'm too old. And his buddy was like, we'll see about that. Who interceded successfully on his behalf. From 1929 to 1933, Rickover qualified for submarine duty and command aboard the submarine S9 and S48. Okay, so did you guys catch it? From 1929 to 1933, he was doing this submarine shit, right? We built that. He was doing the submarine shit from 1929 to 1933. Do you remember the year that he got his master's in engineering? That was 1930. So while he was at Columbia University doing his year to get his master's, he was also in Washington. Where's Columbia? Is Columbia in Washington? Can you look that up real quick, please? Columbia University. Seems like it would be Washington, Columbia, D.C., District of Columbia. Yeah.
New York.
What?
New York. New York, New York.
So how is this guy in 1930 going to school in New York to get his master's while also being in Washington to qualify for submarine duty? And the Naval Postgraduate School is a public graduate school operated by the U.S. Navy and located in Monterey, California.
I mean, submarines go really fast. So it's under North America to go from New
Guys,
York to California.
do you see this? Like, I'm the one that's wrong here, you guys. So if I'm the one that's wrong, why doesn't this make more sense? So while he was, before earning a Master's of Science degree in electrical engineering from Columbia University in 1930, by way of a year at the Naval Postgraduate School. So he got his Master's of Science from Columbia, based in New York, while doing a year at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, while also being in Washington from 1929 to 1933 to be able to qualify for submarine duty and command aboard the subs S9 and S48. Okay. I know I'm stupid. You saw the submarine go underwater, and you believe I'm wrong. What's going on?
I know it's unconventional, but it works for us.
There's rules. Can't laugh unless the other person knows. If you still felt the feelings, we could. Completely committed to each
It's
other.
weird. It's weird how this happens all the time. Like
How did you meet him?
a whole shit ton of people come in, talk a bunch of shit,
Met at the bar next door. He was reading.
and then the number stays high for a while, but then it slowly starts to dissipate.
We met
But before that,
a couple months until I
the
decided
people just stop talking. Everybody stops talking,
fire satellite office.
and then the number just watches and slowly dissipates, and
I ended things immediately.
it's really weird how this happens every time.
No, he was a freelance
But
contract. He finished out his term just like
I'm not stupid.
just because you didn't know.
My wife is not stupid.
No, you own the company he works for. You've been all over cable news on the cover of every.
I don't understand what's happening here. This reminds me of when Peggy figured out that cotton couldn't be in like Iwo Jima and Germany at the same time. Like, this is what it seems like to me. What are we talking about here? Like, this is the narrative as I'm supposed to know it. This is the narrative as you're supposed to know it. If you were to bother to give a shit, if you were to actually look up nuclear submarines, the invention, if you were ever trying to figure out whether submarines were real, and you started down that rabbit hole, you're gonna come across this. This is not some secret information, something I've hacked into, something like that. This is what you're supposed to know, and if you don't believe this narrative, you're stupid, and you deserve all the comments and shit that I get, and all this other stuff. Does it have to do with what I'm talking about?
The 1890s.
I mean, that would be what I would expect. But if they built that in the 1890s, why weren't they building like? How are they building suspension bridges? And that's from the Brook. That's the same time the Brooklyn Bridge is being built. They're building that. Okay. See, it's starting to happen. You're starting to see it. It's like when they say in the Matrix that he's looking and he says eventually I don't even see the code anymore. It's not the literal code dripping down because they see it. They're talking about this. My wife is starting to break through and starting to see through the code without even trying. And that's what ends up happening with this, is you start seeing this shit and immediately going, wait, what? Dude, we could build skyscrapers and shit back then. Why are we building log bridges made of logs? That other guy, fucking couple decades before that, just invented fucking metal suspension bridges out of nothing. Why couldn't you just do that?
Right.
My point. Exactly. You don't know what's going to come with this person.
All right, let's see. We're back here. While aboard S-48, he was addressed. While aboard S-48, he was addressed a letter of commendation. There we go. Commendation from the Secretary of the Navy for rescuing Augustine Paris or Pacis ... from drowning at a submarine base, Coco Solos Canal Zone. What a superstar this guy is. While at the office of the Inspector of Naval Material in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1933, Rickover translated Das Unterseeboot, the submarine, by World War I German Imperial Navy Admiral Hermann Bauer. Rickover's translation became a basic text for the U.S. submarine service. Nobody knew how to fucking translate German back then? Why would they not have anybody else to be able to translate German? Hey, we have this book in German. None of us can figure it out. Can you? Oh, well, I speak German. Like, what are you talking about? How stupid is this? Did nobody knew what Unterseeboot was? Unterseeboot. Okay, so again, now while at the Office of Inspector of Naval Material in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1933. So now he's because from 1929 to 1933 he qualified for submarine duty. But now he's in Philadelphia. Um German Imperial Navy Admiral Hermann on July 17th, 1937, he reported aboard the minesweeper Finch at Qingdao, China, and assumed what would be his only ship command with additional duty as commander Mine Division 3 Asiatic Asiatic Fleet Asiatic Fleet. So wait, this guy is like the biggest badass admiral of all time, and he only commanded one ship? That doesn't seem weird to you guys?
He must not have been very good. One ship.
In August, Finch stood out for Shanghai to protect American citizens and interests from the conflict between Chinese and Japanese forces. He stood out? Or Finch stood out? Stood out for Shanghai to protect American citizens and interests from the conflict between Chinese and Japanese forces? I don't even know what that means. On September 25th, Rickover was promoted to lieutenant commander retroactive to July 1st. I mean, what? What would that matter? In October, his designation as an engineering duty officer became effective, and he was relieved of his 3-month command of Finch at Shanghai on October 5th, 1937. This guy commanded a ship for 3 months and was designated an admiral? I mean, like, that makes me lose respect for the position. I didn't think all you had to do was command one ship one time for 3 months. And how do you get to be admiral for that? Like, I get that maybe you contributed greatly to the idea of submarines and nuclear, but how does that make you an admiral? Command a ship. It's weird, my feed's getting attacked. It's weird, my feed's getting attacked right now. Why is the stream getting attacked? Seems strange. Alright, so let's keep going. Rickover was assigned to the Cavite Navy Yard in the Philippines and was transferred shortly thereafter to the Bureau of Engineering in Washington, D.C. Once there, he took up his duties as assistant chief of the electrical section of the Bureau of Engineering on August 15th, 1939. Now think about it. Why is this guy getting all these promotions and shit? I mean, he commands a ship for 3 months, gets moved to the Philippines, assigned to the Cavite Naval Yard, for what we don't know in the Philippines, and for how long we don't know. I mean, he ended his stint in October 5th, 1937, as command of the ship, and began in Washington August 15th, 1939, so literally almost 2 years later. So, was it 2 years that he was at the Cavite Navy Yard in the Philippines? And what was he doing there? He couldn't have been like getting better at shit. Like what? What do you mean? What sort of school is provided the random military base in the Philippines in 1930 fucking 7? What is going on here? On April 10th, 1942, after America's entry into World War II, Rickover flew to Pearl Harbor to organize repairs to the electrical power plant of USS California. Rickover had been promoted to the rank of commander on January 1st, 1942. Why? This is 3 years. He took up his duties as assistant chief of the electrical section of the Bureau of Engineering August 15th, 1939. And by January 1st, 1942, he's moved up to a commander. I mean, what are we talking about here? Either the Navy's a bunch of bullshit or this story's a bunch of bullshit. Which one is it?
I mean, the Navy boys are the soft ones.
Yeah, right. On rank of captain or commander on January 1st, 1942, and in late June of that year was made a temporary captain. 6 months later, he's made a captain. Temporary, of course. In late 1944, he appealed for a transfer to active command. He was sent to investigate inefficiencies at the Naval Supply Depot at Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. That sounds like a really high, like you want to be promoted and they're like, okay, cool. Why don't you go investigate some inefficiencies at the Naval Supply Depot in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania? The guy that was just in the Philippines and was in this is the commander. He was the commander who had been promoted to temporary captain, and now you're like, hey guy, go investigate some inefficiencies.
Right.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Then he was appointed in July 1945 to command of a ship repair facility in Okinawa. Wow. In late 44, he appealed for a transfer and active command. He was sent to investigate inefficiencies at a naval supply depot in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Late 44. Then, within another 6 months, this is another 6 months, he's appointed to command of a ship repair facility in Okinawa. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, think about this. Just think about this is the 1940s. We're now in the 40s. Sorry, I was gonna say 30s. That would have been ridiculous. Shortly thereafter, his command was destroyed by Typhoon Luis, and he subsequently spent some time helping to teach school in Okinawa to Okinawan children. The commander, he was as high as a captain at one point, a temporary captain, is now teaching school children in Okinawa. What is going on?
He missed out on his own kids.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So
okay.
He was helping these kids.
So he had a choice. So this super important guy that in a few years is about to invent the first nuclear sub is teaching Okinawan children after his command gets destroyed by a typhoon.
He's at a loss. He's using them to heal. They're keeping him busy and occupied, giving him purpose. He's giving back to the community. They're probably taking care of him at that point.
1940s fucking mentality at its finest.
Oh, very open-minded.
Later in the war, his service later in the war. What the fuck does that mean?
Well, they skipped over a few years.
His service as head of the electrical section in the Bureau of Ships brought him a Legion of Merit and gave him experience in directing large development programs, choosing talented technical people, and working closely with private industry.
Because of the experience with teaching the kids.
Time magazine featured him on the cover of its January 11th, 1954 issue.
You think a competitor put rating up to this?
The accompanying article described his wartime service. Sharp-tongued Hyman Rickover spurred his men to exhaustion. Right, this little bitty asshole that gets off fucking making Goyim puke and shit. Ripped through red tape, drove contractors into rages. He went on making enemies, but by the end of the war, he had won the rank of captain and had also won a reputation as a man who gets things done. He made a bunch of enemies, which meant he got promoted to captain. That's how that works. I know when I think about the fraternity, the fraternity aspect of the military, I know the guy that nobody likes is the guy that everybody likes. All right, now we're going to get to naval reactors and the Atomic Energy Commission. No. In December 1945, Rickover was appointed Inspector General of the 19th Fleet of the West Coast and was assigned to work with General Electric at Schenectady, New York, to develop a nuclear propulsion plant for destroyers. Okay, that's December of 45. Inspector General in New York. December 45. He was appointed in July of 45 to command of the ship repair facility in Okinawa. Shortly thereafter, his command was destroyed by Typhoon Luis, which was October of 45. He subsequently spent some time helping to teach Okinawan children, teach school to Okinawan children. And then by December, so October is when the thing happens, and by December, he's appointed Inspector General of the 19th Fleet of the West Coast and was assigned to work with General Electric at Schenectady, New York, to develop a nuclear propulsion plant for destroyers.
He went to Okinawa and they rescued him, brought him home, fixed him up.
So what did he teach children in school for like a week? Is that what we're saying?
Maybe a month. Till November, and then they brought him home. He detoxed.
The thing was from in October, so it was probably most of October. If it's a typhoon, it's a big deal. Let's see.
Typhoons last a day, go away.
No, they're more than that. They're basically hurricanes. Was a deadly and destructive typhoon, tropical cyclone that hit Japan in October 45. Soon after the secession of World War II, caused at least 377 deaths and another 74 missing persons while leaving a wide swath of damage across the country. Formed October 2nd, dissipated October 13th. Okay, so.
Yeah, but it wasn't on the land.
Okay, right. Let's see.
They say that about the
impact
in Florida, but it only,
meteorological history. October 2nd, Fleet noted that the tropical depression was developing near Caroline Islands as a result of an equatorial outflow. Let's see. Whatever, I don't care. So again, It's possible. I agree. It's possible. It's possible that he was command of this. Oh, Jesus Christ, where'd it go? Okay, he was in command of the ship repair facility on Okinawa in July. Everything was destroyed in October. He was then teaching school children for a little while until he was picked up and taken to New York to develop nuclear propulsion. He was in charge of a ship repair facility and was brought in to design and develop a nuclear reactor for subs. Like, how does that translate? How do those things work together? Hey, if the people watching can comment, will somebody just say so? You can tell me I'm stupid, whatever. Just say that you can. I just want to see if people can comment. It seems like it just got shut off. Somebody shut off the commenting? Is that what happened? It's weird. All right. In 1946, an initiative was begun at the Manhattan Project's Clinton Laboratory, now the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Yep, there we go. Another connection. Now we go back to the Manhattan Project again. To develop a nuclear electric generating plant. Realizing the potential that nuclear energy held for the Navy, Rickover applied. Think about like he's in Okinawa, or I mean, when did he? I don't get it. If he was appointed Inspector General of the Fleet at General Electric, he applied for what did he apply for? I don't know. I don't get it. Rickover was sent to Oak Ridge through the efforts of his wartime bosses, Rear Admiral Earl Mills, who became the head of the Navy's Bureau of Ships that same year. Rickover became an early convert to the idea of nuclear marine propulsion and was the driving force for shifting the Navy's initial focus from applications on destroyers to submarines. Rickover's vision was not initially shared by his immediate supervisors. Same goddamn narrative. For some reason, the one guy thinks about it and presents it to his military superiors, and they don't think that there is a need for underwater vessels. For having a superior form of water, attack, defense, whatever. The people in charge never seem to see the value in it at first. If this guy, makes a campaign where he raises funds from the people to be able to do this, I'm going to shit myself. Please don't make me shit myself. He was recalled from Oak Ridge and reassigned advisory duties with an office in an abandoned ladies' room in the Navy building. How does this story keep doing that? He's like this guy, he's this guy, he's this guy. Oh wait, no, he's this guy. Oh, immediately back up to this guy. No, back down here. Like, isn't this the weirdest shit? He was assigned advisory duties with an office in an abandoned ladies' room in the Navy building. This is the captain. This is this is like, this guy is a he ends up being the most decorated, longest serving super duper officer whose office was in an abandoned ladies' room. No. He subsequently went around several layers of superior officers, which is just how that works, right? You go around your superiors. That's looked at highly and fondly by the military. Even if your idea is good, they're like, good thing you overrode protocol.
Chain of command.
Right.
It's chain of command, literally.
Like, that's never a good thing. He went around several layers of superior officers, and in 1947 went directly to the Chief of Naval Operations, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz. Here we go, Chester Nimitz. That's another one of those guys. Also a former submariner. So he just went to the fucking chief like that. That's just how that works, huh? Where was he stationed? Oh, I'm sure he was stationed all over the place. Commands. Chief of Naval Operations, Pacific Ocean Arenas, United States Pacific Fleet, Bureau of Navigation, USS Augustine, USS Regal, USS Chicago, Atlantic Submarine Flotilla, USS Skipjack, 3rd Submarine Division, Atlantic Torpedo Fleet, USS Norwal, USS Snapper, USS Plunger, 1st Submarine Flotilla, USS Decatur. Now, you know what's interesting about that? If you look at all of his commands, everything's blue except for the submarine stuff. All of the submarine stuff. Strange. I mean, there's no information. Not even, oh, this was this, blah, blah, blah. You just can't click on it. There's nothing.
Ray mainly worked in academia for the last. No one willing to say that Raiden targeted Kylo directly.
1909, World War I. Nimitz. Trying to find where was he? 39, 40. Okay, from 40 to 41, Nimitz served as president of the Army Navy Country Club in Arlington, Virginia. Wait. No, he was the chief. When was he the chief? On June 15th, 1939, he was appointed chief of the Bureau of Navigation.
Perform oral sex on her.
That's interesting.
Tried not to react. Why simply refused to go in the closet with her.
She said if I didn't give her what she wanted.
So I'm not sure how this guy was able to go to the chief like that. That seems like that would be a strange thing that he just happened to be in that position. Nimitz immediately understood the potential of nuclear propulsion in submarines and recommended the project to the Secretary of the Navy, John L. Sullivan. Gee, that's interesting. The mighty John L., huh? Just a different mighty John L. I mean, I'm assuming that's not the John L. Okay. No, it's this John L. Sullivan. Yeah. Gotta love that the narrative just reuses things like that. Sullivan's endorsement to build the world's first nuclear-powered vessel, USS Nautilus, later caused Rickover to state that Sullivan was the true father of the nuclear navy, the good Jew. Well, I know I'm the father, but he's the true father because he allowed me to do it. So, again, that'll be the USS Nautilus. I'll click on it. And it actually took me to this one. So, subsequently, Rickover became the chief of a new section of the Bureau of Ships, the Nuclear Power Division, reporting to Mills. He began work with Alvin M. Weinberg, the Oak Ridge Director of Research. Man, it's amazing all these guys are Jewish. As low as you get, it's all just dumb fucking goyim dying on the lowest levels. But when you get to the very top, it just happens to all be Jews. Interesting. They must just be so much smarter and better than us, huh? The Oak Ridge Director of Research to initiate and develop the Oak Ridge School of Reactor Technology and to begin the design of the pressurized water reactor for submarine propulsion. In February 1949, he was assigned to the Atomic Energy Commission's Division of Reactor Development and then assumed control of the Navy's effort within the AEC as director of the Naval Reactors Branch. The twin role enabled him to lead the effort to develop Nautilus. So let's go pressurized water reactor. This is going to be really interesting, I would imagine. A pressurized water reactor is a type of light water nuclear reactor. Light water. Now we got to see what that is. The light water reactor is a type of thermoneutron reactor that uses normal water as opposed to heavy water as both its coolant and neutron moderator. Furthermore, a solid form of fissile elements is used as fuel. Thermal neutron reactors are the most common type of nuclear reactor, and light water reactors are the most common type of thermal nuclear reactor. There are three varieties of light water reactors: the pressurized water reactor, which is how we got here to begin with, the boiling water reactor, and most designs of the supercritical water reactor. After the discoveries of fission, moderation, and of the theoretical possibility of nuclear chain reaction, early experimental results rapidly showed that natural uranium could undergo a sustained chain reaction using graphite or heavy water as a moderator, while the world's first reactors, CP-1, X-10, etc., were successfully reaching critically uranium enrichment. Wait, were successfully reaching critically. Why is that called? Why is that the term? Reaching critically. Criticality? Criticality. What is criticality? In nuclear engineering, critical mass is the smallest amount of fissile material needed for a sustained nuclear chain reaction. The critical mass of a fissionable material depends on its nuclear properties, specifically its nuclear fission cross-section, density, shape, enrichment, purity, temperature, and surroundings. The concept is important in nuclear weapons design. A recreation of the 1945 criticality accident using the Demon core. A plutonium pit is surrounded by blocks of neutron reflective tungsten carbide. The original experiment was designed to measure the radiation produced when an extra block was added. The mass went supercritical when the block was placed improperly and began being dropped. When a nuclear chain reaction is in a mass of fissile material, when a nuclear chain reaction in a mass of fissile material is self-sustaining, the mass is said to be in a critical state in which there is no increase or decrease in power, temperature, or neutron propulsion. A numerical measure of a critical mass depends on the effective neutron manipulation factor, K, the average number of neutrons released per fission event that go on to cause another fission event rather than being absorbed or leaving the material. A subcritical mass is a mass that does not have the ability to sustain a fission chain reaction. A population of neutrons introduced to a subcritical assembly is exponentially decreased, in this case known as K less than 1, known as criticality, subcriticality, K less than 1. A critical mass is a mass of fissile material that self-sustains a fission chain reaction, in this case known as criticality, K equals 1. A steady state of spontaneous fission causes a proportionately steady level of neutron activity. A supercritical mass is a mass which once fission has started will proceed at an increasing rate, in this case known as supercriticality, K greater than 1. The constant of proportionality increases as K increases. The material may settle into equilibrium, i.e., become critical again, at an elevated temperature, power level, or destroy itself. Due to spontaneous fission, the supercritical mass will undergo a chain reaction. For example, a spherical mass of pure uranium 235 with a mass of about 52 grams would experience around 15 spontaneous fission events per second. The probability that one such event will cause a chain reaction depends on how much the mass exceeds the critical mass. If there is uranium 238 present, the rate of spontaneous fission can be much higher. The fission can also be initiated by neurons produced by cosmic rays. See, I mean, all this shit is like, you just sort of have to trust it.
What year was that one built? That sub built? Well,
Which one?
because they're saying that this was built June of 1958, and this is just a ship, a Great Lakes freight ship.
Right.
Doesn't that look a lot like the subs that you were?
Exactly.
But this isn't a sub.
No, that looks exactly like it.
This is a freight ship. This ship.
Right. Okay. Let's see. 1941. Let's see. Criticality. Uranium enrichment began to develop from theoretical concept to practical applications in order to meet the goal of the Manhattan Project to build a nuclear explosive. In May 1944, the first grams of enriched uranium ever produced reached criticality in the low-power LOPO reactor at Los Alamos, which was used to estimate the critical mass of U-235 to produce the atomic bomb. LOPO cannot be considered as the first light water reactor because its fuel was not solid uranium, compound cladded with corrosion-resistant material, but was composed of uranyl sulfate salt dissolved in water. It is, however, the first aqueous homogeneous reactor and the first reactor using enriched uranium as fuel and ordinary water as a moderator. By the end of the war, following an idea of Elvin Weinberg, natural uranium fuel elements were arranged in a lattice in ordinary water at the top of the X10 reactor to evaluate the neutron multiplication factor. The purpose of this experiment was to determine the feasibility of a nuclear reaction using light water as a moderator and coolant and clad solid uranium as fuel. The result that showed that with a lightly enriched uranium, criticality could be reached. This experiment was the first practical step towards a light water reactor. After World War II, and with the availability of enriched uranium, new reactor concepts became feasible. In 1946. Eugene Wiener and Elvin Weinberg proposed and developed the concept of a reactor using enriched uranium as a fuel and light water as a moderator and coolant. This concept was proposed for a reactor whose purpose was to test the behavior of materials under neutron flux. This reactor, the Material Testing Reactor, MTR, was built in Idaho at INL and reached criticality on March 31st, 1952. For the design of this reactor, experiments were necessary, so a mock-up of the MTR was built at ORNL to assess the hydraulic performances of the primary circuit and then to test the neutronic characteristics. The MTR mock-up, later called the Low Intensity Test Reactor, LITR, reached criticality on February 4th, 1915, and was the world's first light water reactor. So why would you make a mock-up like that? It's fucking stupid. That doesn't really help anything. Pressurized water reactor. PWR constitutes the large majority of the world's nuclear power plants, with notable exceptions being the UK, Japan, and Canada. In a PWR, the primary coolant, water, is pumped under high pressure to the reactor core where it is heated by the energy released by the fission atoms. The heated water pressure, the heated high pressure water then flows to a steam generator where it transfers its thermal energy to low pressure water of a secondary system where steam is generated. The steam then drives turbines which spin an electric generator. In contrast to a boiling water reactor, pressure in the primary coolant loop prevents the water from boiling within the reactor. All light water reactors use ordinary water as both coolant and neutron moderation. Most use anywhere from 2 to 4 vertically mounted stem generators. VVRER reactors use horizontal stem generators. Nuclear Regulatory Commission image of pressurized water reactor vessels. There it is. Those are somehow inside the submarine, and I guess I don't even know. Oh, here we go. An animation of a PWR power station with cooling towers. So a power station needs to be this big, but something that can power a submarine running indefinitely, going super fast, doing all the maneuvers and shit that can fit inside the sub.
The process of creating electricity using nuclear power begins with the splitting of uranium atoms in the reactor. This process, called fission, produces heat. In a pressurized water reactor, the heat from the water surrounding the nuclear fuel is kept under pressure to prevent it from boiling. The hot water is piped from the reactor vessel to a steam generator, where it transfers its heat to boil water and makes steam in a second system. After transferring its energy, the water is pumped back to the reactor vessel to be reused. The non-radioactive steam from the steam generator spins turbines that drive the generator to produce electricity. After the steam is used in the turbines, it is drawn into a condenser, where it is cooled and condensed back into water and pumped back to the steam generator to be heated and reused.
Are you sure you're gonna be okay without me?
Oh yeah, you go and right away.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, did I accidentally went too far. Shit. Shit. Pressurized water reactor. There we go. PWRs were originally designed to serve as nuclear marine propulsion for nuclear submarines and were used in the original design of the second commercial power plant at Shippingport Atomic Power Station. PWRs currently operating in the U.S. are considered Generation 2 reactors. Russia's VVER reactors are similar to U.S. PWRs, but the VVER 1200 is not considered Generation 2. France operates PWRs to generate the bulk of its electricity. Several hundred PWRs are used for maritime propulsion in aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and icebreakers. In the U.S., they were originally designed at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for use as a nuclear submarine power plant, with a fully operational submarine power plant located at the Idaho National Laboratory. Follow-on work was conducted by Westinghouse Bettis Atomic Power Laboratory. The first purely commercial nuclear power plant at Shippingport Atomic Power Station was originally designed as a pressurized water reactor, although the first power plant connected to the grid was at Obinsk, USSR. On insistence of Admiral Hyman G. Rickover that a viable commercial plant would include none of the, quote, crazy thermodynamic cycles that everybody wants to build. Everyone else wants to build. The U.S. Army Nuclear Power Program operated pressure water reactors from 54 to 74. 3 Mile Island generating station and the 3 Mile Island nuclear generating station initially operated two pressurized water reactor plants, TMI-1 and too much information too, TMI-1 and TMI-2. The partial meltdown of TMI-2 in 1979 essentially ended the growth and new construction of nuclear power plants in the U.S. for 2 decades. Watts Bar Unit 2, a Westinghouse 4-loop PWR, came online in 2016, becoming the first new nuclear reactor in the United States since 1996. The pressurized water reactor has several new Generation 3 evolutionary designs. Like, this is the history. I'm getting through this bullshit. I don't care about this. The design, let's see. Nuclear fuel in the reactor pressure vessel is engaged in a controlled fission chain reaction, which produces heat, heating the water in the primary coolant loop by thermal conducting through the fuel cladding. The hot primary coolant is pumped into a heat exchanger called the steam generator, where it flows through several thousand small tubes. Heat is transferred through the walls of these tubes to the lower pressure secondary coolant located on the shell side of the exchanger, where the secondary coolant evaporates to pressurized steam. This transfer of heat is accompanied without mixing the two fluids to prevent the secondary coolant from becoming radioactive. Some common steam generator arrangements are U-tubes or single-pass heat exchangers. In a nuclear power station, the pressurized steam is fed through a steam turbine which drives an electrical generator connected to the electric grid for transmission. After passing through the turbine, the secondary coolant water-steam mixture is cooled down and condensed in a condenser. The condenser converts the steam to a liquid so that it can be pumped back into the steam generator and maintains a vacuum at the turbine outlet so that the pressure drop across the turbine, hence the energy extracted from the steam, is maximized. Before being fed into the steam generator, the condensed steam, referred to as feed water, is sometimes preheated in order to minimize thermal shock. The steam generated has other uses besides power generation in nuclear ships and submarines. The steam is fed through a steam turbine connected to a set of speed reduction gears to a shaft used for propulsion. Direct mechanical action by expansion of the steam can be used for steam-powered aircraft catapult or similar applications. District heating by the steam in use some countries for direct heating. Two things characteristic. I mean, so I mean, I get lost here because it's just nuclear marine propulsion is a propulsion of a ship or submarine with heat provided by a nuclear reactor. The power plant heats water to produce steam for the turbine used to turn the ship's propeller through a gearbox or through an electric generator and motor. Nuclear propulsion is used primarily within naval ships such as nuclear submarines and supercarriers. A small number of experimental civil nuclear ships have been built. Compared to coal or oil-fueled ships, nuclear propulsion offers an advantage of very long intervals of operation before refueling. All the fuel is contained within the nuclear reactor, so no cargo or supply space is taken up by fuel, nor space taken up by exhaust stacks or combustion air intakes. The low fuel cost is offset by high operating costs and investments in infrastructure. However, so nearly all nuclear-powered vessels are military. Military nuclear ships, military nuclear ships. By 1990, there were more nuclear reactors powering ships, mostly military, than there were generating electric power in commercial power plants worldwide. Under the director of U.S. Navy Captain, later Admiral Hyman G. Rickover, the design, development, and production of the nuclear marine propulsion plants started in the U.S. in the 1940s. The first prototype naval reactor was constructed and tested at the Naval Reactor Facility at the National Reactor Testing Station in Idaho, now called the Idaho Laboratory. Here we go again. Submarines, the first nuclear submarine, USS Nautilus, Put to sea in 1955, SS was a traditional hull classification. The Soviet Union also developed nuclear submarines. The first types developed were the Project 627 NATO-designed November class with two water-cooled reactors, the first of which, K3 Linsky Kosmolov, was underway under nuclear power in 1958. Nuclear power revolutionized the submarine, finally making it a true underwater vessel rather than a submersible craft. So they're really saying that prior to this, there weren't any submarines, which could only stay underwater for limited periods. It gave the submarine the ability to operate submerged at high speeds comparable to those of surface vessels for unlimited periods, dependent only on the endurance of its crew. To demonstrate this, USS Triton was the first vessel to execute a submerged circumnavigation of the Earth, Operation Sandblast, doing so in 1960. That makes so much sense. Nautilus, with a pressurized water reactor, led to the parallel development of other submarines like the unique liquid metal cooled sodium reactor, the USS Seawolf, or the two reactors in Triton, and then the Skate class submarines powered by single reactors, and a cruiser USS Long Beach in 61 powered by two reactors in 1962. This is giving me a bunch of details that don't fucking matter. How do we get to these positions? The largest number of nuclear submarines ever built are the 26,500 ton Russian Typhoon class. The smallest nuclear warships to date are the 2,700 ton French Rebus class attack submarines. The U.S. Navy operated an unarmed nuclear submarine, the NR-1 deep submergence craft, between 1969 and 2008, which was not a combat vessel, but the smallest nuclear-powered submarine at 400 tons. And I bet it's one of those silly-looking ones, right? The deep submergence craft. There you go. I'm just
Guy pointed a gun at my head, pulled the trigger. Was supposed to kill you.
Two things are characteristic for pressurized water reactors when compared with other reactor types: coolant loop separation from the steam system and pressure inside the primary coolant loop. In a PWR, there are two separate coolant loops, primary and secondary, which are both filled with demineralized, deionized water. A boiling water reactor, by contrast, has only one coolant loop. While more exotic designs, such as breeder reactors, use substances other than water for coolant and moderator, e.g., sodium in liquid state, or as coolant or graphite as a moderator, the pressure in the primary coolant loop is typically 15 to 16 megapascals, which is notably higher than other nuclear reactors and nearly twice that of boiling water reactors. As an effect of this, only localized boiling water occurs, and steam will recondense properly in the bulk fluid. By contrast, in the boiling water reactor, the primary coolant is designed to boil. So this is just ridiculous. So I went with this guy for a really long time here, and where were we? Rickover oversaw the development of the Shippingport Atomic Power Station, the first commercial pressurized water reactor nuclear power plant. Kenneth Nichols of the AEC decided that the Rickover Westinghouse pressurized water reactor was the best choice for a reactor to demonstrate the production of electricity, with Rickover having an ongoing organization and a reactor project underway that now had no specific use to justify it. This was a reference to the first core used at shipping port, originating from a canceled nuclear power aircraft carrier. This was accepted by Lewis Strauss and the Commission in January 1954. Rickover was promoted to Vice Admiral in 1958, the same year that he was awarded the first of 2 Congressional Gold Medals. For what? What? He exercised tight control for the next 3 decades over the ship's technology and personnel of the nuclear navy, interviewing and improving or denying every prospective officer being considered for a nuclear ship. Think about that. There you go. There's something that you wouldn't have thought, right? You wouldn't have thought. If I would have said to you that every single nuclear ship officer, whatever, submarine person, had to get the approval of one guy, you would say I was crazy. That's not true. There's no way they could do that. Over the course of Rickover's career, these personal interviews numbered in the tens of thousands. Over 14,000 interviews were with recent college graduates alone. So, let's just say, all right, so, oops. So let's say this is real, right? 14,000 divided by 365. That would mean he was doing 38. Wait. What did I say here? 14,000 with recent college graduates alone. I don't know how to do that math. 14,000, I guess, over decades. Well, let's just say, no, you can't. I don't know what the time frame is. If I could do the time frame, then I could figure it out. The interviews ranged from misshapen and newly commissioned ensigns. Ensigns is a junior rank of a commissioned officer in an armed forces of some countries, normally in the infantry or navy. As a junior officer in the infantry regiment was traditionally the carrier of the regimental colors, the rank acquired a name. This rank has generally been replaced in the army ranks by second lieutenant. Ensigns were generally the lowest ranking commissioned officer. Okay. Destined for nuclear powered submarine. Okay. Newly commissioned. These interviewees range from midshipmen and newly commissioned ensigns destined for nuclear powered submarines and surface combatants to very senior combatant experienced naval aviator captains who sought command of nuclear powered aircraft carriers. The content of most of these interviews has been lost to history, though some were later chronicled in several books on Rickover's career, as well as in a rare personal interview with Diane Sawyer in 1984. Gosh. In 1973, though his role and responsibilities remained unchanged, Rickover was promoted to the rank of a 4-star admiral. This was the second time after Samuel Murray Robinson in the history of the U.S. Navy that an officer with a career path other than an operational line officer achieved that rank. Right. For what? Because his responsibilities did not include direct command and control of combatant level naval units. Technically, Rickover was appointed to the grade of admiral on the retired list so as to provide some clarity on this issue. This was also done to avoid affecting the maximum authorized number of admirals, 0 to 10, on the active list. What? That's fucking stupid. That makes a joke of the rankings. That just some good, goofy Jewish guy who became a fucking Protestant or whatever, that he's the second one ever.
From Jewish to Protestant.
Shush. As head of naval reactors, Rickover's focus and responsibilities were dedicated to reactor safety rather than tactical or strategic submarine warfare training. However, this extreme focus was well known during Rickover's era as a potential hindrance to balancing operational priorities. One way that this was addressed after Rickover retired was that only the very strongest former at-sea submarine commanders have held Rickover's now unique 8-year position as NAVC-08. So again, since him, they've actually made like a law, like a rule, that nobody like him can hold that position again. Why? If he was so good at it, wouldn't it make sense that they just happen to luck into finding the best guy for the job and that's what they should do? The longest chartered tenure in U.S. military. From Rickover's first replacement, Kennard R. McKee, to today's head of naval reactors, William J. Houston, all have held command of nuclear submarines, their squadrons, and ocean fleets, but none have been a long-term engineering duty officer such as Rickover. In keeping with Rickover's promotion to 4-star admiral, those who were subsequently selected for assignment to director naval reactors are promoted to the same rank, but also on active duty status. So they're literally saying that his whole thing is bullshit and it'll never happen again. But for some reason, they did it with him. Historian Francis Duncan, who for over 8 years was granted generous access to diverse numbers and levels of witnesses, including U.S. presidents as well as Rickover himself, came to the conclusion that the man was best understood with respect to a guiding principle that Rickover invoked foremost for both himself and those who served in the U.S. Navy's nuclear propulsion program: exercise of the concept of responsibility. Exercise of the concept of responsibility. That's a quote. Exercise of the concept of responsibility. What the fuck does that mean? This is further evidenced by Rickover's listing responsibility as his first principle in his final year's paper and speech, Thought on Man's Purpose in Life. Our purpose in life is responsibility.
Responsibility to what?
I'm really getting sick of this, but I gotta keep going real quick. Rickover's stringent standards are largely credited with being responsible for the U.S. Navy's continuing record of 0 reactor accidents. That's not possible. You don't do something perfectly. That's just not how things work.
The military does. We cannot lose faith in the military's strength and abilities.
Defined as the uncontrolled release of fission products to the environment resulting from damage to a reactor core. He made it a point to be aboard. Oh, and you were asked. See, I forgot you were gone for this part. Rickover was promoted to Vice Admiral in 1958, the same year he was awarded the first of 2 Congressional Gold Medals. He exercised tight control for the next 3 decades over the ships, technology, and personnel of the nuclear Navy, interviewing and approving or denying every prospective officer being considered for a nuclear ship. Over the course of Rickover's career, these personal interviews numbered in the tens of thousands. Over 14,000 interviews were with recent college graduates alone. For over 3 decades.
All he did was do interviews.
No, but that's not what it says. But just to think, you say, how could such a big secret be kept there's so many people that there would be too many people involved. But if I would have told you that every single person that was ever aboard any nuclear ship or submarine went through one guy, would you have believed me?
I still don't.
Well, that's what it says.
Right. It doesn't mean it's true.
Okay, well, where do you draw the line with what they lie to you about?
Does something exist? Yes. The details in which they tell us it exists? No.
Okay, but you're like, it's amazing how much I seemingly, at least to me, I've proven my point kind of repeatedly. And it's not like I'm looking at the crazy conspiracy page. It shouldn't be happening like this. Let's see. He made it a point to be aboard during the initial sea trial of almost every nuclear submarine completing its new construction period, while also conducting every interview, while also designing, while also this, while also, yeah. Following the 3 Mile Island accident on March 28, 1979, Admiral Rickover was asked to testify before Congress in a general context of answering the question as to why naval nuclear propulsion has succeeded in achieving a record of 0 reactor accidents as opposed to the dramatic one that had just taken place on land. The accident-free record of the United States Navy reactor operations stands in some very stark contrast to those of the Soviet Union, which had 14 known reactor accidents. As stated in a retrospective analysis in October 2007, U.S. submarines far outperformed the Soviet ones in the crucial area of stealth, and Rickover's obsessive fixation on safety and quality control gave the U.S. nuclear navy a vastly superior safety record to the Soviet one. Because we're just better. Given Rickover's single-minded focus on naval nuclear propulsion design and operations, it came as a surprise to many in 1982, near the end of his career, when he testified before the U.S. Congress that, were it up to him what to do with nuclear-powered ships, he would sink them all. At a congressional hearing, Rickover testified that, I do not believe that nuclear power is worth it if it creates radiation. But it does, doesn't it? So what do you mean, if it does? Then you might ask me, why do I have nuclear-powered ships? That is a necessary evil. I would sink them all. I am not proud of the part I have played in it. I did it because it was necessary for the safety of this country. This is why I am such a great exponent of stopping this whole nonsense of war. Unfortunately, attempts to limit war have always failed. The lesson of history is when a war starts, every nation will ultimately use whatever weapon it has available. Every time you produce radiation, you produce something that has a certain half-life, in some cases for billions of years. It is important that we control these forces and try to eliminate them. That's interesting. A few months later, following his retirement, Rickover spoke more specifically regarding the question, could you comment on your own responsibility in helping to create a nuclear navy? Do you have any regrets? I do not have regrets. I believe I have helped preserve the peace for this country. Why should I regret that? What I have accomplished was approved by Congress, which represents our people. All of you live in safety from domestic enemies because of the security from police. Likewise, you live in safety from foreign enemies because our military keeps them from attacking us. Nuclear technology was already under development in other countries. My assigned responsibility was to develop our nuclear navy. I managed to accomplish this. When he was a child, still living in Russian-occupied Poland, Rickover was not allowed to attend public schools because of his Jewish faith. Damn yous! Damn yous to hell! You guys didn't see that coming? President Kennedy and Rickover, White House, February 11, 1963. In addition to the multilateral Polaris Force, we discussed education and how he and I were brought up as boys. Yeah, I would imagine the poor Jew in super war torn Poland, the Holocaust, that he could relate to the wealthy Kennedy. I'm sorry, but when he was a child still living in Russian occupied Poland, he was not allowed to attend schools because it was his Jewish faith. You know, you couldn't just be like, nah, I'm not Jewish, and then go to school.
No, because he was wearing a Star of David
Right.
in his armband.
Starting at the age of 4, he attended a religious school where the teaching was solely from the Tanakh, dumb Jewish book, i.e., Old Testament in Hebrew. Following his formal education in the United States, wait, what? How did we just jump to that? How are you not allowed to attend school?
Jesus went
Then,
from 0 to 33 in 3 months.
then you only go to some dumb religious school. Then you're suddenly in formal education in the United States. Wait, like right? Because didn't he graduate grammar school at 14, and then graduated high school at 18? So when did he not go to school because he was Jewish? Following his formal education in the U.S., Rickover developed a decades-long and outspoken interest in the educational standards of the U.S. as being a national security issue, particularly compared during the Cold War era to Soviet Russia. An example of his passion for education from his 1959 report on Russia in the context of comparative educational systems. There is no room here in nuclear power plant development for lofty theories which do not work out in practice. We would not get anywhere if we had the loose, hazy thinking you encounter when you bring out the obvious failures of the American education system. There are times when it is irresponsible to avoid criticizing something which one knows to be wrong and dangerous for the nation as a whole, like Judaism. I feel that everyone who has a position of responsibility in this country and who can see and understand what is happening not only has the right, not only has the right, he has the obligation and the duty to speak. So basically, he's saying that I'm right for what I'm doing. I see something that is wrong for everybody, and not only do I have the right to say what I'm saying, I have the obligation to say what I'm saying. This is why I feel so strongly about education, about our future to give our children as good an education as they deserve and need. It is my considered opinion that there is no problem that faces our Congress or the country that is as important. Rickover believed that U.S. Standards of education were unacceptably low. His first book, Standard on the blah 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 blah. General Dynamics scandal in the early 80s. Structural welding flaws in submarines under construction were covered up by falsified inspection records, and the resulting scandal led to significant delays and expenses in the delivery of several submarines being built by the General Dynamics Electric Boat Division shipyard in Groton, Connecticut. The yard tried to pass on the vast cost overruns to the Navy, while Rickover demanded that the yard make good on its shoddy workmanship. The Navy settled with General Dynamics in 1981, paying out $634 million of $843 million in the Los Angeles class submarine cost overrun and reconstruction claims. The Navy paid that out, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So where does the Navy get its money? Can anybody tell me that? Can anybody tell me who pays the Navy? You do, by the way. You do. The people do. Secretary of the Navy John Lehman was partially motivated to seek the agreement in order to continue to focus on achieving President Reagan's goal of a 600 ship Navy. But Rickover was extremely bitter over the General Dynamics yard being paid hundreds of millions of dollars, and he lambasted both the settlement and the Secretary Lehman. This was not Rickover's first clash with the defense industry. He was historically harsh in exacting high standards from defense contractors. It was later publicly announced by a former General Dynamics employee on 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace, the only white man to ever make me moist. That Rickover was right, that General Dynamics was lying to the Navy, but by then Rickover's public image was already damaged. A Navy ad hoc gratuities board determined that Rickover had received gifts from General Dynamics over a 16-year period valued at $67,628, including jewelry, furniture, exotic knives, and gifts that Rickover had in turn presented to politicians. Charges were investigated that gifts were provided by General Electric and the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock, both major nuclear ship contractors for the Navy. Secretary Lehman admonished him in a non-punitive letter and stated that Rickover's fall from grace with these little trinkets should be viewed in the context of his enormous contributions to the Navy. Rickover released a statement through his lawyer saying his conscience is clear with respect to gifts. No gratuity or favor ever affected any decision I made. Senator William Proxmite of Wisconsin, a longtime supporter of Rickover, later publicly associated a debilitate to his having been censored and dragged through the mud by the very institution to which he rendered his invaluable service. So, I mean, he was taking gifts and shit. Come on. I think we're back to the Nautilus and submarine. So I didn't get very far. So I'm going to have to do part 6 tomorrow. And I don't want to, but I'm going to have to. So I hope you join me for part 6 tomorrow. Seems strange. Just seems strange that this keeps happening and I'm not getting any further where it's making more and more sense. It just seems strange. Anyway, I can't wait to finally read about how they breathe underwater. That's the part I keep waiting to hear, and I haven't heard that with any of these. The only thing that we heard was the one time where they said that the engine was a high concentrate peroxide engine that when mixed with the water, it creates breathable oxygen as well as heat propulsion to propel the propeller and make breathable oxygen. But those things failed and were better used for making torpedoes that go boom. Interesting, isn't it? I don't know. I'm not really sure what happened here. So, again, it seems strange that for the first however long this was, I was, I had however many viewers. I can't remember what the highest point was. It was somewhere in the upper 80s or whatever. And all these comments just coming through. And then suddenly the comments stop and the number stays high, but then it gradually goes down. And literally there hasn't been a single comment since. We are assuming he believes every stupid theory ever. That was the last comment that came through. Like, and you look at, there's probably 100 comments here, maybe, well, way more. It only lets me go back to people who are repeatedly putting a clown face. And lots of these people are the people that come here all the time and say that shit. Oh, come on, yes, you're wrong. Eat plaster off the wall, it's candy, and the background is wearing. This is just dumb. You can't prove I'm nor God. Does that mean I am? I can't prove that you're not God. Does that mean you are? No, you would have to prove you are. That's where the outrageous claim comes from. So the outrageous claim is that we can make vessels that can swim underwater. And we've been able to do that for almost 200 years. That's the outrageous claim. Me saying I don't believe it's not the outrageous claim. You saying that you're God is the outrageous claim. I don't need to prove that. You do, dumbass. Oh, da 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 da. This guy doesn't believe anything. He reads except book. He denied it. I mean, like, it's so crazy to hear how these same dumb comments. It's really strange. They had skyscrapers, right? We don't bother asking about that though. You know, the roads outside, there's drugs, mainlining with the bucks cracked, but the existence of submarines. It's weird too how there are people that have been here for the last few days and for every part of this who are pretending like it's their first time here. I mean, I get through all these and it's just nothing. It's fucking nothing. It's weird. The mortal eye of God collapsing into itself with his eyes. Oh my god. So stupid. I mean, it's just stupid. I guess I'm just done. Anyway, pedophiles, kill yourself.